My name is Jeremy Nicholson, and this is my final project pitch for Full Sail University. I present to you Nighttime Guardian. This is a game where the player assumes the role of a child's teddy bear during the middle of the night. Try to imagine what that teddy bear would do to keep that child safe during the night. Throughout the game, the player will be fighting off waves of enemies, collecting supplies, and watching for clues as what those supplies are going to be going to. And every toy found throughout the level will be usable as a weapon, which can change on a day-to-day basis because during the daytime, the world would be inhabited by the people who live in the house. These are the player controls, easy keyboard and mouse movements. As the player progresses through each level, every hour in the game world will make the world grow, making the player seem smaller and the world seeming bigger. This is an effect of the shadow creatures that are in the game. And this will happen every hour up to midnight and then go back after midnight till the level's over. So every hour it gets bigger until we hit a certain point and then it starts getting smaller again back to normal size. The game starts on a Monday night, ends on a Friday night. Each night of the week is a level. Each level is from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. And with that each passing hour, not only is the level getting bigger, but the enemies are getting stronger as well. Here's the storyboard of what one night would look through, roughly, starting with a normal-sized baseball and the normal-sized player. It's going to adjust each night with the objects in the house doubling in size every hour. And then they revert back every hour after midnight. While the player's going through the house, they will be finding impassable objects like locked doors, and they will need to find objects in order to get through them, such as keys or an umbrella for certain monsters they might need. Flashlights can be usable at one night, but the locations of these objects can differ night to night, so you don't always know where they're going to be on each playthrough. So when you find one, you want to use it that night and try to progress. The further you progress, the closer you're going to get to finding out the source of where the shadow creatures are coming from, and you need to destroy that. And destroying that is what ends the game. Upon entering a room, enemies will spawn and are starting to attack the player. The player will be attacked until you leave that room. Enemies will keep spawning. Once the player feels they have done enough throughout the house in one night, or it's getting closer to 6 a.m., they can head back to the child's room. But they cannot get back into bed with the child until 4 a.m. And getting back into bed is what ends the levels. So the player's main goal is to explore the house, to find out the source, acquire items, to progress through the house, and avoid taking damage so that they don't die. Because if they die, then the house would technically enter a nightmare state, which would be an endgame state. Throughout the level, the player will be dealing with creatures out of the shadows. They won't have any real forms, but they will be able to attack the player. There will be different types of enemies, each with different types of attacks. If the player takes too much damage, they enter the nightmare state and they have to restart the night. And there's not usually just running around the house trying to dodge all the enemies, because if you go into a room and try to leave, the enemies will still follow you even though they're not spawning anymore. So eventually you will get outnumbered and not be able to win. They're also able to choose which weapon they would like to use, and they can change that throughout any time throughout the level, carrying only one at a time. And remember, the weapons will change during each level and each day in locations because the house is lived in during the day when the teddy bear is asleep. So the game takes place at night in a single-family household throughout 1 week. The playstyle would seem similar to Resident Evil in my eyes for the look and feel of the levels. But instead of having the fixed camera view angle, you would be able to control the camera and be able to see all directions. So the player is able to see all of the clues throughout the levels. As I stated, it's similar to Resident Evil for the gameplay style, except you are not stationary when attacking. In Resident Evil, you are able to die pretty quickly from one zombie. It would take more than just one shadow creature to kill the health of the player. Other possible play strategies to approach the level could be to basically try to run and gun it, get as many clues as possible and progress as far as you can in one night, and just try to run back to one point in the child's bedroom and just try to hold off and shoot all the enemies that are going to come at you, and hope for the best until 4 a.m. hits when you can just jump into the bed real quick. And then it can also be taken the other way. A player can go too cautious and take too much time having to do too much in one night, or end up just not making it and the shadows taking over and entering the nightmare state. The foreseen risks that could happen throughout development of this could be our wanted size of the level, but we would obviously scope that to fit properly in the time frame that we are provided with. For myself, would be coding the actual level vamping up and down throughout the time frames. We would focus on that first as well to make sure it would be doable. If it wasn't, we'd have to figure out a different way to approach that. Obviously, we'd want to have good animation on our player and our enemies, but if timing isn't there, then we know we'll have to figure out something else to make it look good at least. Playtesting at some point with a controller would be nice, because I'd like to be able to have a shippable product to have on our portfolio, and I know I usually prefer to use a controller over a keyboard and mouse. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.